You don't need a louder message. You need a true message that truly reflects who you really are. Because when you finally tell the story only you can tell, you stop competing and start creating. You stop chasing strategies and start inspiring change. I'm going to share with you how to craft your core story, the story only you can tell, to win the hearts and minds of your audience, so you can stand out not by shouting louder, but by being profoundly you. Because your story is your greatest power in both business and life. No tactic, algorithm, or marketing trend can replace the magnetic pull of truth. When shared with the right intention, your story has the power to transform your business from a daily grind into an inspirational movement. It fuels creativity, deepens impact, and turns your purpose into your platform. So, what is the real question? How do you share your story in a way that attracts, convinces, and converts without sounding contrived, cold, or like you've sold your soul? Because when your message isn't aligned with your truth, you end up building your castle on sand. Even if there are some short-term wins, burnout or self-sabotage inevitably follows. You've heard before that stories sell. It is true. They build trust, connection, and natural influence. But if all the brand story formulas out there feel flat or hollow, that's not a reflection of you being unoriginal. It's proof that those formulas ignore the essence that truly opens people's hearts. They fail to bridge the gap, and there is a huge missing piece. Yes, there are founder stories, conversion stories, client success stories, etc., and they might work for some, but they often lack the depth that moves people. And what if you don't have a catalog of dramatic success stories yet? If you don't worry. It's actually a good thing. You don't need one. Because waving money results and big money promises in people's faces like, oh, my client made 10K in a week, might seduce a few, but it won't inspire loyalty, trust, or transformation. We live in a time when people are tired of noise and false promises. Instead, they crave honesty. They want to feel something real, something special. And that's where you come in. When you share your story with integrity and depth, money becomes a natural consequence, but it should never be the goal. So let's accept the new paradigm. It is the moment for genuine impact makers like you to rise. Gone are the days of squeezing yourself into a niche. We now live in a time when you are your own niche. In a world increasingly influenced by artificial intelligence, humanity is your greatest advantage. Your voice, your truth, your story, that's what people remember, trust, and follow. So, stop doubting, start creating. Roll up your sleeves, put on your brave heart, and let's open the magic vault of your stories. When you grow up in poverty, you don't dream big. You dream of survival. So when my 12-year-old self announced my impossible dream to my mom, she looked at me as if I had gone completely mad. I'm Anna, and I want to begin building our new paradigm with a question. Have you ever felt that your story doesn't matter? That it's too ordinary, too messy, or maybe just not inspiring enough to share? I know that feeling intimately, because for a long time I thought my story was something to hide, not to tell. I grew up in poverty in Ukraine. Imagine living in a house with no running water. In the rough 90s, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, times were hard for everyone. But for my family, they were even harder. There were days we didn't have money for food. Chocolates, yogurts, even bananas were luxuries reserved for birthdays or holidays. At school, I was humiliated and mocked for being poor. I became quiet, withdrawn, invisible, and somewhere inside I learned to believe that I wasn't enough because we didn't have much. That belief, that deep, painful whisper, followed me for years. It showed up every time I tried to shine, every time I spoke, every time I reached for more. But even back then, somewhere deep inside of me, there was that inner spark, that inner spirit seeking its higher expression. And that it reflected in the knowing that life could be bigger than what I saw around me. So when I was 12 years old, I told my mom, when I grow up, Mom, I'm going to live in America. But she just looked at me as if I had lost my mind. And she said, that's impossible, honey. But when someone tells you that your dream is impossible, it's usually because they can't see it yet. A long story short, I did come to America at the age of 21, completely alone. And I thought it was the end of my story, the grand finale, but it wasn't. It was the beginning. Because what I discovered wasn't just a new country and building life from scratch on my own. It was all the inner stories I carried from my previous life. The ones whispering, you are still not enough. Those stories sabotaged opportunities, kept me small, and delayed any progress until I realized something profound. The only way to change a story is to own it. That realization became the foundation of everything I teach today. Because your story, with all its scars and imperfections, is the very thing that makes you magnetic. So let me show you how to begin finding your own core story through a 7-step core story map. The story only you can tell, or multiple stories. Every one of us carries a story, not just about what happened to us, but about who we became through it. Your story isn't a resume. It's not a highlight reel. It's the heartbeat behind why you do what you do and who you are. And the bridge that connects you to the people you are meant to serve or you are serving is through that story. So this guide will help you uncover and express your core story, the story only you can tell. It's a 7-step journey of reflection and reclamation, from the experiences that shaped you to the message you now carry. You don't need a perfect story. You just need an honest one. So let's begin. Step number 1, the origin moment, where it all began. Every powerful story starts with an experience that shaped how you see yourself or the world. It might have been a challenge, a moment of wonder, an event that changed you forever, a spark of wonder, or a quiet turning in your soul. It doesn't have to be earth-shattering. It must be authentic and meaningful to you. So what was it for you? When I look at my story, when I was 16, my Ukrainian teacher, literature teacher, handed me a paper marked with a D and said, Anna, I don't think writing is for you. You just can't express yourself. I felt the wind leave my sails. Something I loved was suddenly declared off limits. That moment planted a belief, I'm not enough, something I wrestled with for a large part of my life. Now, when you reflect upon your life, what experience defined how you understood life? It could be an early experience, an early memory, or experience in your adult life. What belief was born there? And is it still true today? Again, Another example, I grew up in poverty and believed I wasn't enough. That belief followed me into adulthood until I became aware of that belief and learned to rewrite it. Once you identify the origin moment of your story, let's go to step number 2, the turning point when something shifted. There is always a moment when something in us says, no more. It could be a failure or a success, a person, or even a sentence you heard. It's the decision to rewrite the story you've been living up until this point. So what was the catalyst of change for you? Reflect on what moment, event, or realization made you see things differently. What truth began to surface? It might arrive as a sentence, a coincidence, or a person who sees what you can't yet see. So going back to my story when my Ukrainian teacher declared that I was useless at creative writing, years later in America, one day I was at Broward College where I was taking lots of English classes to learn English. My professor, Mr. Blanco, asked, "Miss Anna, may I show your essay to other students?" My heart sank. Oh my God, I thought, I failed again. And then he smiled. Excellent work. In that instant, my story cracked open. Someone finally saw what I could be, not what I had been told I was. So what was the turning point for you that made a big shift for you? Step number 3, the challenge, the test of becoming. Every journey comes with resistance, and that friction creates character. In America, I could always find work, waitressing, translating, tutoring, but it all felt like climbing a ladder leaned against the wrong wall. I was busy, proactive, yet without a clear direction. Life felt like putting an octopus to bed, impossible to contain and slipping through my fingers. The hardest battle wasn't with circumstance, but with my own uncertainty. So what about you? What obstacles stood between you and the life you wanted? People, circumstances, or fears? I want you to explore what were the biggest internal and external barriers, and how did they shape your strength or resilience? For example, moving to a new country showed me my biggest battle wasn't the language barrier, it was my own limiting stories. Step number 4, the lesson, what it taught you. Your transformation lives in the inside, that moment of recognition when meaning crystallizes for you. Reflecting on my experience with teachers from school to university, I realized that when I didn't have a good grade, I wasn't lost or incapable, I was learning resourcefulness. My Ukrainian teacher saw me as I was. My American professor saw me as I could be. And that gave me permission to step into my potential. The shift was subtle, but life-changing. When you are seen in your potential, you start living toward it. Now, when it comes to your life, your story, what truth or wisdom came from your challenge or challenges? What did you finally allow yourself to believe? So, for example, my story wasn't my limitation, it was my power. Step number 5, the gift. What you now offer others. Every story holds a gift, a message, a strength, or a new perspective that you can share. After years of searching for meaning through hustle, I discovered that truth doesn't arrive in a 3-step formula. It unfolds layer by layer. Now I help others find and express the essence of their own stories, to see the hidden brilliance in what they once dismissed as chaos. So I would like you to reflect on, what do you want others to know, feel, or believe through your story? Who could benefit from the value of your message? Who could your experience serve or inspire? What value will it give to others? For example, in my case, to narrow it down to one sentence, obviously I can talk a lot, I help others find and express their voice, because hiding helps no one. Step number 6, the expression, how you share it. Telling your story is an act of freedom. When you give it a voice, it becomes healing for you and for others. Telling your story is liberation and empowerment at the same time. Now, I used to think that storytelling was about perfection, polished sentences, flawless grammar, clever expressions. But actually, the real magic happens when you speak from the heart, when your story reveals truth rather than performs for approval. So what feels most natural for you? Is it speaking, writing, teaching, creating, everything? How can you express your truth with love instead of trying to prove your worth? So for example, in my case, I tell my story through videos, teachings, and coaching, not to impress, but to connect. Choose your avenue that aligns with your natural style. And step number 7, the affirmation, your declaration of becoming. This is where the circle closes and a new one begins, your declaration of self. Because of everything I've lived through, rejection, migration, reinvention, I now create a life filled with freedom, connection, and impact. At least I do my best. My voice no longer seeks validation. It carries truth, my truth. My story is my offering. So what new identity or truth are you ready to claim out loud? Let it become your anchor when self-doubt visits. Ask yourself, what sentence sums up who you have become because of your past experiences? What words remind you that your story is sacred? What does your story now allow you to say with an absolute certainty? Because of everything I have lived through, I now do my best to live life with freedom, connection, and impact. My voice inspires others to believe that they can create their dream life too. Every chapter of your life was preparing you for this moment where you are. The moment you own your voice and your truth. Your story isn't just about survival or success, it's about becoming. And when you speak it from the heart, you give others permission to do the same. So you've just uncovered, hopefully laid a solid foundation to tell the story only you can tell. Now it's time to refine it, embody it, and share it with confidence and impact. And if you would love guidance on turning your story into your message, your brand, or your voice of influence, I would love to walk that path with you. So why don't we book a free 30-minute story discovery call? We'll uncover how to use your voice, your truth, and your unique story to create a business or enhance your existing career that feels fully aligned with who you really are. Because your story is indeed your absolute power.